Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today I'll talk about some frequently asked questions that I got on stream and also on Discord. Obviously talking about the Ball Lightning Archmage that I'm going to league start, and I wanted to quickly talk about it. So first up, there is no grace or determination in the build. That is by design. However, it doesn't mean that you can't. In fact, there's a lot of people who go energized armor right here, right? You have this energized armor setup. You go down, Sanctum, and you're transforming all the energy shield and radius to armor. Then you go determination, and at the end, you're probably going to be looking at round about 20 to 30k armor, also with a granite flask. Yes, you can do that. Your points are pretty tight though, so you will most likely lose round about half your damage. You also lose some energy shield because you're now going to go for energy shield armor gear. One problem is that I really want to use Inpulsa, so you would already be losing like 1,000 to 1,500 armor from there. And on top of that, yeah, you would lose like half your damage. But by no means do I count out determination being interesting. As for grace, maybe, but in general, I would probably go determination because you're already perfectly here, and you can also go for 10% of armor applies to chaos damage from hits, which is completely crazy. If you've ever played a Juggernaut, you definitely know that. But yeah, I don't see any problem with that. As for people saying, isn't that a little bit sketchy? The thing is, you have a lot of effective hit pool. Doesn't mean that the build is a tank, obviously. In fact, it's not all that tanky. It's a pretty standard thing, I would say. One thing that I noticed for sure is that against enemies where grace is usually trash, right? Like talking about right side builds that I usually play, is against certain bosses, I definitely felt like I could take a hit. And another thing that people underestimate if you cut too much damage is actually your instant leech might not be capped anymore. Don't think that's going to be a problem in end-to-end game, but just in general, just because your leech is capped doesn't mean your instant leech is also capped. And for me personally, recovery has just been way more of an issue than max hit in general. Once the recovery was fixed, I didn't really have all that many problems anymore, especially because my energy shield would always fill up, and then the hits would not target my mana anymore. The second thing people have asked me about is Cloak of Defiance and Atziri's Foible. I don't really know what to say about them. They never really made sense in my PoE. So I know that Cloak of Defiance gives you a ton of, like, it saves you a passive point, I guess, with Mind Over Matter. It gives you a ton of mana regen. Evasion, energy shield, okay. I never really, like, obviously in endgame you want Inpulsa, but even before that, just a normal body armor is just better. Also, something you have to realize, especially early, is unique body armors, especially rare ones. You don't just have to buy them. Now you have to actually link them. Whereas a rare body armor will come at least 5 or 6 link. Let's say 6 link, because you can just buy a corrupted 6 link for 20 to 30 chaos with the right colors, or even like a decent ES. You don't need a body regalia, right? Like, but let's say a decent ES 6 link for like 50 C. I would much rather have that than like buy this like armor for 2-3 divines and then 5 link it, right? But that's up to you. It's definitely not bad. I just never really felt like it was necessary. Same thing with Atziri's Foible. People are hyping this amulet up so hard. I don't really know what to think about it. It's good, especially once you have Fertile Catalysts on. But I gotta say, man, it seems like people never account for resistances on their POBs. And they're just like, yeah, you can throw this unique in and this unique in. And it's just like, it never makes sense for the trade-off. Losing like 3 suffixes on an amulet. I mean, I can get mana regen plus 2 suffixes, right? That could be crit multi, that could be raise, that could be whatever I want it to be. And people just kind of seem to, I don't know, maybe compare items kind of weirdly. Also, in endgame, most likely Strangle Grasp could be super good. But as well as that, a Blue Pearl Amulet like this is actually not that hard to craft, and it's just as crazy with Fertiles. And if you're saying early game uniques, I don't think these are going to be early game uniques. I think they're going to cost multiple divines, because Mana Stacker is big, and some people have them in their POBs, and they're like decent at best. I don't even want to put them in there, because then people might invest their first few divines into something that's like slightly better maybe than a rare if you're breast capped or something. So I just don't really feel like it's necessary. Also, this list is absolutely epic right here. Just make that up real quick. Number 3, Eternal Blessing versus Divine Blessing. So here's the thing. You can go either way. I'm just going to tell you why I chose Divine Blessing on most of the POBs. Divine Blessing means that I can also reserve clarity on mana, because it doesn't have the exclusion thing where you can't have any other auras on your mana, meaning I don't have to put it on Arrogance. And if you look, for example, right here, with Arrogance on, that means that you're going to have 500 life reserved, right? That's a lot of HP. And even though it sometimes doesn't show up as much in PoB, in the actual game, it is quite a big deal, because now the less life you have, the less your mana gets involved in terms of your defense. So that's a big deal for me. And that is worth for me to press it every 18 seconds or something. Right now, what do I have in terms of duration? Let's actually look right here. Yeah, if we look at Wrath, 19 seconds. I have to press it once every 19 seconds. I'm gonna be able to do that. However, if you're using a defensive aura, it's different. So if you're, for example, going Determination, that's where Eternal Blessing gets a lot better, because it's not like you should ever forget to press your defensive aura. You should always have that up. It should be consistent. If you forget to press Wrath, okay, you do a little bit less damage. If you forget to press Determination and you're an armor character, that might actually get you killed. And Eternal Blessing, you just turn on one time, you can completely forget about it. But once again, if you want clarity, and you probably do, you will need to use Arrogance. Then another question I'm getting a lot is, why do I have Pinpoint in my endgame setup and not in my earlier setups? So while leveling, this could actually be fine. I personally did 2 leveling runs. I actually liked it without Pinpoint. And to explain, Pinpoint is basically just, you do a lot less damage while you're moving around, like a lot less. Sure, you could say, well, just stand still and cast a few times, but that's just not really how it goes usually. And if you do less damage early, especially against rares, and you have to stand there so often, it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel good, and the one ball lightning actually felt better than running Pinpoint. However, and that's the reason I have it in my endgame POV, once we're talking these damage numbers, having Pinpoint in it is not that big of a deal. Oh, one more thing, if you guys are going Mjolnir and you guys are going Cyclone, Ball Lightning might not be the best way to do it, because Ball Lightning is actually kind of bad on Cyclone, because you're standing on top of enemies. You can't even make use of all the AoE. Probably like a third to a half of your damage is just gonna go poof. But you only know that if you actually know how Ball Lightning works. If you want to know what I mean, let's get point blank here. It doesn't have any impact, right? We're not a attack build. But now you get the projectile distance meter here. And if you type in 10, you will all of a sudden see that your damage almost halves. And that's because it says all bolts in range. It cannot travel through your enemy. Like, while it goes through your enemy, it procs. But if it spawns right on top of him, half of the AoE is already over him. So it just doesn't work. Ball Lightning is not very good on Mjolnir. Does that mean it's not going to be good in general? Maybe it's still the best lightning skill because it's just very good. But you're missing out on a lot of the power that actually makes it out. And if you make a POB like that, you should definitely factor that in and put like 40% less damage. Now, stun immunity in Instant Leech, there has been some back and forth with some people who think it's not necessary. Now, in my endgame POB, I actually don't use Unwavering Stance anymore, but that's only because I think Immutable Force will work out. We're not channeling, so in theory, it should be fine. I don't know exactly. There are certain breakpoints. I'm going to think about that because we also get a little bit of stun and block recovery from other sources. So maybe there's something to it, but in general, I probably want to solve it that way because this pathing here is really, really inefficient. And as for Instant Leech, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what you have tested. Without Instant Leech, it just felt absolutely awful. But if you don't need it, I mean, save the points. Another thing that people are pointing out is balancing your mana cost. Obviously, if you're Kitava's Thirst, then you need at least 100 mana cost to trigger your spells. This is not cumulative. It's not like you pay 50 and then it procs. You have to like do it in one attack. But even if you aren't Kitava's First, you still want to spend mana because of Sigil of Power, because of Arcane Capacitor, and just some other small effects here or there. It is very important. You don't want to use like a Laviangas or something like that and get your mana cost to 0. Laviangas could be like a, I don't know, like a little bit of a band-aid fix for early game. I haven't really found it to be necessary, but in general, I would like recommend against it. Now, a lot of people have asked me why I'm using Inpulsa as an end game. It doesn't look good in PoB, and obviously that's why it's a sacrifice to get the Explodey. Once you start mapping, you will know why. This chest is like ridiculous, and you can use it with Shock Roll if you have really good clear speed, which is something that we definitely need in endgame. Once we like in mid game, it's fine to have like okay clear speed, but in endgame, once you're comparing to some of the other builds, and once you have stuff like Expedition and Legion to do, now Explodey can help a lot of these builds that are usually more considered more slow. It can just help them out a ton. And then if you look at calcs, we also get 150% increased area of effect in total, 100% from our Ascendancy, and then all the other points we take for a 3.4 meter Impulsas, because that's all global AoE that also counts towards it. And then we have Conviction of Power. A lot of people told me, oh, Paul, do you realize that you only need maximum charges for Anathema? Yes, I do. You start with 3. With this one, you get 4. The point is Conviction of Power also makes it so you don't have to get those power charges, because in the crit version, you actually want the crit. Also, having endurance charges always up is a lot better than with enduring cry only sometimes. And sure, maybe you could argue you would get power charges anyways, but Assassin's Mark only goes on one enemy, and then it only has a 1 in 20 chance to grant you 1 power charge. Against bosses, it's gonna take forever to get up. So sure, if you feel like you really need the Illuminated Devotion, but for me, Illuminated Devotion is just like an early stepping stone to get some early spell leech and a little bit of chill and shock immune, but later you just don't need it. But yeah, that's about all I got. I'm very much looking forward to tomorrow. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I will be putting out a Atlas strat guide video in time, probably during the waiting, like while everybody's waiting for the patch to drop. But yeah, with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.